I was saying the Committee on Transport should take up that matter because I happen to come from that area, and what has been raised is so serious that it needs to be investigated and remedial measures put in place to save the lives of people. So please, the committee, take up the matter. Senator Omanga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a very active member of this House, I've got so many statements, but 2 have appeared on the order paper today. My first statement, Mr. Speaker, I rise on pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek for statement from Standing Committee of National Security and Foreign Relations. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state progress made by authorities on the investigations of recent children kidnappings across the country. Then 2, outline plans put in place on protection and prevention against children violence across the country. State whether physical, moral, and counseling support has been given to the families and to the children who have been affected. Thank you. That's my first statement. Should I go on with my second statement, Mr. Speaker? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My second statement is on the alleged illegal eviction of residents living in Nairobi City County Staff Housing Units in Isili and in Pumwani. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations regarding to the illegal eviction of residents from Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Staff Quarters at Isili Section 3 and the Pumwani Maternity Staff Quarters at the Meru Road in Nairobi City County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the circumstances surrounding the eviction, subdivision, and allocation of the parcels of land belonging to Nairobi City County government by a private developer. Hope, Mr. Speaker, the chair devolution is listening. Number 2, the committee should provide the current survey plans, deed plans, and title deeds of the said parcels of land. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the committee should state the plans that have been put in place by the Nairobi City County Government and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services to ensure protection of county institutions and properties from illegal acquisition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chararge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank one of the most active members of this House, Senator Omanga, for that hard work of the 2 statements. Maybe 2 quick observations. One, Mr. Speaker, on the statement on the issue of evictions. I think, Mr. Speaker, there is a steady rise of infrastructural evictees. In the past, we used to discuss about the forest evictees and IDPs, but it is unfortunate that infrastructural evictees continue to rise, especially in Nairobi City County, among other towns. Mr. Speaker, the biggest problem that we are facing as a country is that there seems to be a miscommunication between the agencies and the county governments. The notorious agencies of Kenya Urban Roads Authority, KURA, Kenya National Highway Authority, KENA, have been the people who are mostly do the evictions within the cities and because of expansion of roads and road reserve, Mr. Speaker. I think as a Committee of Roads and Transport, they should go beyond and understand what is the multi-agency between the coordination of KURA, KENA, and even National Construction Authority, NCA, Mr. Speaker. You saw yesterday in Kisumu, a building collapsed, and yet the NCA have been given authority to be the people who provide the standardization, ensure that the compliance is done. But the county government of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, the KURA and KENA, there seems to be not proper coordination when it comes to evictions that we are seeing in the city. Mr. Speaker, the third point that I wanted to make is I thought there was a communication within government, although there could be dysfunction with this government. Let's assume that there is functional government that has been there, Mr. Speaker, has indicated that there should be no evictions within the COVID period, Mr. Speaker. You can imagine evicting these people at this point in time. Most of Kenyans, according to KNBS last year, we indicated that 1.7 million Kenyans have lost their jobs. You can imagine that these Kenyans that are supposed to be evicted, Mr. Speaker, where will they get a job? Where will they get rent, Mr. Speaker? So I think going into the future, the Roads and Transport Committee must tell us the evictions that were done in Ruai, others that were done in Kawankwara and many other places, even in Meru and many other parts of the country, Mr. Speaker. The Roads and Transport Committee must tell us what was the communication of Ministry of Health, Interior Ministry, Mr. Speaker, and also the national government regards the evictions, especially, Mr. Speaker, during this COVID pandemic. And finally, on the first statement, Mr. Speaker, just one comment, is that the issue of kidnapping of children had become rampant of late, Mr. Speaker, and it is a worry to many parents, especially in Nairobi. We have seen cases where children are being kidnapped for various reasons, but the DCI has not been able to crack. But I hope, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I saw when the issue of Laikipia came up, the Minister of Interior, the IG and DCIO just sent some secretaries within their meetings to appear before the national security. But when it comes to the National Assembly, the CS and his entire team, including the ones that are put on their uniform, normally appear before the Committee of the National Security in National Assembly. So I hope when this matter of kidnappings, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Interior, the DCI and IG and all relevant, even the head of issues of children's services within government, Mr. Speaker, and the ministry in line must appear in person before the National Security Committee of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, so that we are not treated to the drama where, and I think, Mr. Speaker, I want to request you that you need to re-emphasize the need as to why the head of those departments might appear before the committee, because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot operate that way. When it comes to National Assembly, they appear without qualms, but when it comes to Senate, they send their secretaries and their private assistants to appear before our committees. I think you need to re-emphasize that when you indicate that somebody should appear as per the Constitution of Kenya has been provided, they must appear as a cabinet secretary. The Constitution is very clear. It does not say the Chief Administrative Secretary, CAS, should appear because the Constitution does not comply with that. So I was disappointed, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, that when the National Security Committee of the Senate invited the CS, they decided to send some busybodies within those ministries, Mr. Speaker. I think this one should stop. They should appear when required before this committee so that we can function. But if they think they should not appear, then it becomes contemptuous before the Senate of the Republic of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mohamud.
Mr. Speaker, let me also add my voice to the statement requested by Senator Omanga, the issue of kidnapping of children. I think this is a serious matter. It has been going on for a while. In fact, it was very rampant a month ago. But more recently, not even children, a very prominent scholar, Abdul Samad, was kidnapped by unknown people in Isli, in a vehicle which had the wrong fake number plate. Up to now, no one knows whereabouts from the 8th of September. Mr. Speaker, I think this country, we need our security forces to up their game so that, when things like this happen, unless they are the ones who are behind it, they should actually come out and deal with this matter very urgently, because it's very worrying that in daylight, in broad daylight, you are kidnapped by people who are driving, very luxuriously, and you are taken away and nobody knows about you since 8th September. Today is the 13th of September, and now 5 days ago, this matter of kidnapping, it was children before. Now they have gone for prominent people, prominent scholar, a scholar in Horn of Africa matters. So it's missing and it's very worrying. I think this matter must be dealt with. Our security forces must up their game. I thank Madam Wanga for bringing them statement. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's okay. Senator Irungu Kangata. Not that deferred. Senator Beatrice Kwamboka.
Mr. Speaker, I'm there.
Where?
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, okay.
Online.
Where?
Online.
Okay. Okay, Senator Kangata.
I'm ready to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We can't see you.
Mr. Speaker, you can see me. I'm online. And my video is on. Mr. Speaker, I'm online.
We are not seeing you.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm reading the statement or the settings, but I'm ready to read it, Mr. Speaker.
Want to see you put on your camera?
A minute, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can now see you. But you are in where are you?
I'm in my office, Mr. Speaker.
No. That's not an office, Senator Kangata. I'm sorry, we can't allow that. Sorry, we can't allow that. You have to be, the rules are very clear on where you should be. So you are out of order. You are out of order, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize. Maybe you can defer it for 5 minutes. I enter the...
Yeah, when you are in an appropriate place, I'll give you an opportunity. Senator, okay, Senator Beatrice Kwamboka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise pursuant to Standing Order 48.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding the enforcement of the nationwide curfew in containment of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the statement, the committee should, number one, explain why there is discriminatory enforcement of the curfew hours in the country, in general, and within Nairobi City County. In particular, where restaurants in Nairobi West area are forced to close by 7 p.m., while the other facilities operate until 9 p.m. in Eastlands. Number two, state the challenges faced by security in enforcement of curfew hours nationwide. And number three, apprise the Senate on the actions being taken by the Ministry of Interior and coordination of national government to ensure that officers enforce the curfew and related guidelines effectively and uniformly across the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, don't see. Okay, Senator Milgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me support the statement of Senator Kwamboka in terms of security issues when it comes to curfew time in actually capping spread of COVID-19. However, in most cases, we have had a lot of challenges, more specifically when it comes to implementing the rules of curfew time by our security forces. We've had people being beaten up. Some of them are being bundled into cars or various areas in the most ungood ways. And in this case, this ends up not actually achieving what was intended for. We have had curfews again affecting even marketing hours. It has affected sourcing for food. And we have had complaints from various quarters because of the fact that the implementation of curfew hours have not been streamlined. And we are calling upon our national government to look at how curfew is meted. Recently, for example, Mr. Speaker, the western area of our country was under curfew. And Bomet County, which was far away from that area, was made under curfew, despite the fact that we had a low number of COVID-19 cases. That one brought a lot of challenges in terms of working hours, in terms of even sourcing for food, and in terms of even schooling hours for our children. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a very important statement, and I think it is not only affecting Nairobi County, it is affecting all other areas where curfew has been set, and we are asking that this should be looked into further. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Senator Kwamboka for bringing such a step.
Senator Stewart Mazayo.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kwanza nataka kumpatia kongole dada yetu Kwamboka kwa kuleta hii taarifa. Bwana Spika, kulinganishana na vile wananchi wanaona na sisi wenyewe tunaona ni kwamba Mheshimiwa Rais aliweza kuweka mkazo ili watu ikifika wakati wa saa 3 wawe wameenda nyumbani. Lakini Bwana Spika, tunaona kwamba kuna nasema kuna shida ya kuimplement hii, kwa sababu kuna upande mwingine wafanyi biashara wa aina mbalimbali wanafunga maduka yao kama saa 2 ili saa 3 waweze kwenda nyumbani, alafu saa 4 waweze kufika majumbani kwao. Lakini tunaona ya kwamba wafanyi biashara hasa wanapata tabu katika upande wa ubaguzi. Kama ni ukweli, ukiangalia mahali kama upande wa Nairobi, Nairobi West, huku upande wa magharibi, utaona ya kwamba watu wanalazimishwa kufunga biashara zao, na kwingine watu wanaruhusiwa kuendelea. Na hii yote inaletwa kwa sababu ya uzembeaji wa kutengeza hii sheria ya kwamba ikifika saa 3 ili kila mtu anaanza kufunga biashara yake. Nikisema hivi ni kwamba pia uzembeaji huu hauko Nairobi peke yake, huko katika hata sehemu zile za pwani. Kwa upande wa Kilifi tunaona kwamba kuna maeneo mengine yanaruhusiwa mabaa kuoperate mpaka saa 3 saa ngapi, wazi kabisa mbele ya polisi wakiwa wanaona, na hali kuna biashara zingine zinasimamishwa mapema sana. Maduka ambayo watu wanaweza kujifaa kununua vitu yanafungwa na mapema ili watu waende nyumbani kutekeleza wajibu ule wa kuzuia watu wasitoke usiku. Lakini hii pia imefahamika wazi kabisa kwamba kuna watu wengine wanaruhusiwa kuendelea kufanya biashara kabla hiyo. Kwa hiyo tunasema hii sheria ya COVID ambao watu wameambiwa wazuiliwe ikifika saa 3 wawe wameenda, iwe inafanywa kisawasawa, ili biashara zote ikiwa itafunga saa 3 wafunge saa 3, sio wengine wanafunga saa 1 na wengine wanafunga saa 3. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Imana Malaki.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also wanted to support this statement by Honorable Kwamboka. COVID-19 is here with us, and it's out there throughout the world. And it's really affecting our country by the fact that business is closed, as Honorable Matsayo just said, and so many people are forced to go home. In the process, it's actually affecting the economy of our country. Now, this is a disease, in my view, that I really do not think we are going to eliminate it. So when you are faced with a problem like this, I think we need to think about how we can work with COVID-19, just accept it as a normal way of life now, is the new normal, and see how we can deal with it while living our usual lives, running our businesses as usual, but taking care to stay healthy. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, I've traveled a number of times on our main roads, maybe coming from Lodwar to come to Nairobi or going from here to go to Lodwar, and the traffic on the roads is just as usual. So question becomes, if people are being controlled to control the spread of COVID-19, who are those people on the roads at wee hours of the night or even at about 11, 12, who are the people on the road? And those same people are the ones that are probably getting through by giving some little money to those who are supposed to stop people traveling. And so they travel and spread the disease. So then it doesn't make sense to say, oh, you close your bars at this time and go home, because there are still others who are traveling and spreading disease in the process. So that somehow brings a dilemma. Should we close all the roads at a certain time and only leave it for ambulances and essential services? Or should we just go with what I say? Let's live our normal lives while taking care that we don't get sick, let's get things go so that we manage this disease by living our lives normally, but taking care that we not get sick. So, Honorable Speaker, I support this statement and hope that something progressive will come out of it. Thank you very much.
Senator Mwenye Haji.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuunga mkono taarifa ambayo imeletwa bungeni na Seneta Kwamboka. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza hivi majuzi mahakama ilitangaza kwamba zile kanuni za curfew ni haramu na hazifai kutekelezwa, na nafikiri amri hiyo ilitolewa na High Court hapa Nairobi, na nafikiri kuendelea kutumika kwa kanuni hizo za curfew, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kinyume na sheria na ni kinyume na amri ya mahakama. Jambo la pili Mheshimiwa Spika ni kuwa hizi kanuni za curfew ambazo zinatangazwa mara kwa mara ni lazima ziletwe bungeni ili ziweze kuangaliwa, kuchunguzwa na kuweza kupasishwa kama inavyosema ile Statutory Instruments Act ya 2013. Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri kutoka mwaka jana tulipomaliza na kamati ya COVID maalumu, mpaka sasa sijaona regulations zozote ambazo zimeletwa hapa bungeni kuhusiana na mambo ya curfew ama kuhusiana na jambo lolote linahusiana na mwelekeo wa mambo ya COVID katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, kama mwenyekiti wa kamati ya delegated legislation hatujaletewa kanuni zozote. Kwa hivyo hizi kanuni ambazo zinatumika kwa sasa Mheshimiwa Spika ziko kinyume na sheria na haifai bunge kunyamazia jambo kama hilo. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also support this statement in calling upon the agencies of state to have an even approach in handling the issues of COVID restrictions. Mr. Speaker, last week I had the Inspector General directing removal of roadblocks that had become toll stations every time COVID restrictions are being enforced at the curfew time. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, is the effects, the shock effects on small businesses. Mr. Speaker, we have been told that COVID-19 is a new normal. If it's a new normal, then we must go back to normalizing as many sectors of our economy and social life as we possibly can. One, by mass testing of Kenyans. Two, by mass vaccination of those eligible for vaccinations. If you look at countries, Mr. Speaker, like Israel, they are giving third-round injections or vaccinations to the entire population. America has vaccinated almost 2/3 of the population. Here we are still lacking behind. We understand that the government is receiving a lot of donations and acquisitions of vaccines. But we need extraordinary measures, Mr. Speaker. The luxury of saying you get vaccinated if you agree. We have had cases, Mr. Speaker, previously where a sect called a Corino, who constantly refused to go to hospital, used even to be prosecuted whenever they kept their sick in the houses instead of taking them to hospital. If it is government policy that all eligible vaccinees as citizens of Kenya must be vaccinated, then you cannot speak from both sides of your mouth and say vaccinations are important, must be done, but vaccinations will be voluntary. If this disease is so dangerous that we are vaccinating the whole world, then we cannot have the luxury of telling any Kenyan eligible to be vaccinated that is voluntary. Because the moment we say it's voluntary, we'll have people who will be constantly spreading this virus to others, and causing untold death, untold harm, and slowing down our economy. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the government that whenever you have this kind of situation of restrictions, and Senator Mwenye Haji is right in citing the law, that whenever you want to have restrictions of movements of Kenyans, Parliament has the ultimate say. That's why I said last week, Mr. Speaker, when members were calling for KDF to be sent to Laikipia, I said you can't do that unless you have got an express authority from Parliament, because our military cannot be used for internal order, it is for protecting our territory. Mr. Speaker, as we continue battling with COVID-19, the government must realize that there are so many small businesses that have collapsed. And in fact, it's not just small businesses. I saw on TV last night, Mr. Speaker, a count of 5 four-star hotels that have closed down in Nairobi. There were close to 5 big hotels, Intercon next to Parliament, Radisson Blue, Norfolk, a very iconic hotel in Nairobi, and many others. All this is because of COVID-19. How do we, Mr. Speaker, take measures to reopen the economy? The Minister for Health and the multi-sectoral and multi-agency groups that have been put together must now be designing to tell Kenyans the little do's and don'ts that will normalize life so that the matatu industry does not collapse, the small eateries that employ young single parents does not collapse, the transportation industry taking food to markets does not collapse. We want to run a 24-hour economy so that our economy can be able to sustain our needs as a nation. I support the statement, Mr. Speaker, and I urge the police that in enforcing these restrictions, be fair, be just, and be open. We can't have situations where some places, as soon as it hits 8, the police are knocking. In other places, we've been told of places in certain privileged parts of this city that are open 24 hours. So this uniform application of the law doesn't augur well for a good society. Thank you.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend Senator Kwamboka for bringing this timely. Mr. Speaker, I thought the Health Committee, last time we had a discussion and I saw the chair, should have been updating the House on the issues of status of COVID pandemic in the country, just like the Council of Governors have been doing, because we do the oversight, so that they can be telling us the status, because we agree, and I agree with colleagues, that in modern countries, they are now administering the booster after the other doses of vaccination. But, Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that a curfew, among other containment measures, were done in good faith, but the implementation has been done maliciously. I think the biggest beneficiaries, to be honest, of this curfew pandemic, the curfews, Mr. Speaker, the biggest beneficiaries have been the rogue police officers. I know they are good police officers, but the wayward police officers, the criminal elements within the police service, Mr. Speaker, have been using the issue of curfew to do the unthinkable, Mr. Speaker. Remember the Kianjongoma brothers, and I'm happy the judiciary and the, Mr. Speaker, I think you should order Senator Kangata to switch off the noise he's coming with. Mr. Speaker, as I was indicating, we agree with the containment measures that have been put in place. But the rogue police officers within the service, you remember the killing of Kianjongoma the Kianjongoma brothers, Mr. Speaker. You remember even in Lesotho, a police station was burned after the police killed a motorbike operator who had no mask. We have seen enormous cases where extortion is being done in broad daylight because of this curfew, Mr. Speaker. So I think in order, we agree that containment measures should be used, but it should not be a license for extortion by the police officers or rogue police officers, Mr. Speaker. And one interesting thing with curfew, the police are so efficient when it comes to implementing the curfew. But when you are attacked and you go to a police station, they tell you there is no fuel. Bring 1,000 shillings or 1,000 or 2,000 shillings for them to be able to attend to an insecurity in a specific place, Mr. Speaker. So I saw the Inspector General of Police engaging the Kenyans on Twitter, which is a good, but he is yet to answer to the country that the issue of roadblocks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was privileged to be in your county, and I can assure you all is well. But you still see police officers on the road, Mr. Speaker. There are many roadblocks next to Webuye there. You have roadblocks. Yet the Inspector General of Police, and Mr. Speaker, the sad thing is that even roadblocks and curfew roadblocks are being put in the villages, even the small roads that are being used by border. But it is so shame, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I was driving through Bungoma all the way to Eldoret and even to Nandi, the roadblocks are still there. So we need, and I wanted to ask the National Security Committee to take up with the IG to ask him what is happening, Mr. Speaker, so that all of us can be safe, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, of course we agree the night economy has been killed, Mr. Speaker. You know, in those small vibandas, you could buy mutura in the evening. Those are people who are making money. There are other businesses that are done in the dead of the night. They have been killed, and many Kenyans have been lost, Mr. Speaker. There are others business that were done, maybe car wash and many other business that were done at night, Mr. Speaker. There is also effect of the prayers, Mr. Speaker. Nowadays, you cannot go to Kesha because of curfew, and we need people to pray so that curfew can go away, Mr. Speaker. So those are many economies that have been destroyed of the night, Mr. Speaker. Of course, the nocturnal activities have been affected greatly, Mr. Speaker. So all these things have been affected
Senator,
by
you seem
curfew.
to be dwelling so much on nocturnal activities. What is it?
Mr. Speaker, no, I'm not a victim, Mr. Speaker, but I'm just indicating that in by and large, that the night economy has seriously been affected. Even the people who go relax in the evening and many others have been affected because those people earn money, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon that this matter should be treated urgently. I agree, Mr. Speaker, as Senator Kwamboka has said, the high-end estates in this country, people operate up to around midnight. But when you go to these small estates within that are called the middle income and the lower cadre estates, like the slums, the police enforce quickly. So, Mr. Speaker, we need uniformity of the implementation, Mr. Speaker, in terms when it comes to curfew, and I hope this matter should be taken seriously, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to thank you and many colleagues who prayed for me. Finally, the charges, and Senator Wetang'ula is here. Finally, the politically motivated charges when I was arrested in Kabuchai by-elections have been dropped by the DPP, and it shows by and large, Mr. Speaker, that political persecution and political blackmail continue to be a threat to open and free democracy. But I want to thank Senator Wetang'ula. He had said I've learned a few lessons on how the game should be done. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Ochilo Ayako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity here. And Mr. Speaker, just from Senator Cherargei, I think in police health, it is very difficult to enforce curfew because you're already inside there. Now, Mr. Speaker, these curfew regulations, I want to say from the onset that they were intended and they continue to be intended to regulate our lives and to make us safe. But the enforcement of these regulations has not been aligned to common sense. In fact, these regulations have been enforced so ridiculously that many people continue to suffer from how the police are enforcing them. Mr. Speaker, 2 months ago, I lost the parents to my campaign manager, both the father and the wife of my campaign manager. One body was in Nairobi and another body was in Kisumu. So we flew the body from Nairobi to Kisumu, and we expected the bodies to be ferried in one hearse. When we reached Kisumu, these curfew and related regulations, we were told that bodies cannot travel at night. We had a hearse having a body and a family parking in front of a mortuary with passengers, and they could not bring or take home a man and a woman. So I had to look for the powers that be in this nation to have them ferry a man and a woman who had died together with their children. That shows you how ridiculous these regulations are being enforced. Mr. Speaker, you may drive from Nairobi to my village, which is 6 hours, and get a puncture somewhere in Bomet or in Kisii. As you try to fix your vehicle, then curfew time arises. How to explain that to the police, that what you are doing was fixing your vehicle? How to survive in places where you cannot get accommodation? So you can see how ridiculous it is these regulations are being enforced. Now, Mr. Speaker, I come from a county called Migori, which is largely rural. We may have emergencies at home, and we do not have ambulances in Migori. So I'm somewhere in North Kanyamkago and using boda boda or kitanda, trying to ferry my patient to hospital. The police will talk to you and stop. You want money, they'll not care that you are attending to an emergency. So the committee concerned should find out how ridiculous these enforcements are. Kenyans must continue to live. The regulations are good, but how they are enforced are not aligned to common sense. We are a common sense nation, and ridiculous enforcement of regulations will make us suffer for nothing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Musuruve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to support this statement from Senator Kwamboka. And I would like to say, Honorable Speaker, Senator Kwamboka has really brought food for thought on this floor. And when you're talking about COVID, it's not going away any soon. And in many parts of the world, people have gotten back to normalcy. When it comes to business, people are still going on with their business. If you go to places like Turkey, people are going on with their business. In Dubai, people are going on with their business. Why are they doing this, Honorable Speaker? It is because more than 70% of the citizens have been vaccinated, Honorable Speaker. And the countries have taken it upon themselves to ensure that they're coming up with a sustainable solution to COVID. And there is no sustainable solution to COVID other than the vaccination, Honorable Speaker. Because when you talk about curfew all the time, economy of the area goes down, and we have to look for ways and means of ensuring that our economy springs back to normalcy, Honorable Speaker. We have to see to it that children are also going to school, Honorable Speaker, because as we are speaking right now, there are so many children, even with disabilities, who have not been vaccinated, Honorable Speaker, and the government must look into ways and means of ensuring that vaccination reaches those children, because they are the vulnerable of the vulnerables. And so when it comes to vaccination, Honorable Speaker, when you're talking about people who should be vaccinated, children with disabilities should be on the front line. The elderly should be on the front line. Teachers should be on the front line. And the whole country should be on the front line, Honorable Speaker. Because when we talk about enhancing curfew, we are not coming up with a lasting solution. We are just empowering the police to keep troubling our citizens, beating them during the curfew hours, and not letting our people go on with their business as usual, Honorable Speaker. I support this statement by Senator Kwamboka.
Finally, Senator Lekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement by my good friend, Senator Kwamboka. Mr. Speaker, the issue of curfew is quite saddening because of the way the law is being applied, or rather the enforcement is being practiced. Mr. Speaker, some of us traverse these counties day and night, and in most cases, and we do that because we work. There are so many Kenyans who work late at night, those who work in the construction industry, and sometimes when they close their jobs at around 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, when they go home, they are arrested. So it defeats. You're trying to protect Kenyans from being in danger or from them not to contract COVID, yet you're making it difficult for them to earn a living. You know, you really cannot, even in law, double jeopardy, you cannot be tried twice. You're already in trouble, and they already put you in a big trouble. Because even for you to be able to get that opportunity to work, you're being literally, You cannot be tried twice for the same offense. That's double jeopardy. So what is happening now is that we just need to reason and see how best we can be able to assist. I support the police in doing their job, 100%. But I think also what we need to do is to find a way so that the senior police officers can also be human and they can understand that these people are not just exposing themselves to danger. Mr. Speaker, in Nairobi, and we politicians are guilty of this, we have joints that we go and drink. And we can drink in those joints until 3 a.m. Very senior people. But there are other joints which are closed at 7. So really, I think, first of all, it is upon us as leaders to make sure that we don't allow that extension of that, of our fun. Mr. Speaker, when you go to Kilimani, or you go to Village Market, you go to Ruaka, there are pubs which are open almost 24/7. Mr. Speaker.
Yes, hoja yako ni gani, Senator Mazayo?
Senator Ledama, ndugu yangu na rafiki yangu wa karibu sana. Lakini ikifika saa ya maswala ya kuendesha ratiba ya bunge kisawasawa, hapo tunatengana. Nikiuliza hivyo katika hoja ya nidhamu ni kwamba amesema kwamba yeye kama mmoja wa wale viongozi ndani ya hili taifa, kuna mahali anapokwenda wanakaa, polisi wanapajua, wanakunywa ama wanastarehe mpaka saa 9, saa 10 asubuhi wakijivinjari. Sasa wakijivinjari na nani? Hapo hatutaki kwenda huko. Lakini tunauliza tu, ikiwa wanajivinjari mpaka saa hizo na wale walalahoi ama wale ambao hawajiwezi, watu kama wanaoketi wanaojivinjari mahali pale kama Nairobi West, wanaambiwa wafunge hizo starehe zao saa 1. Tofauti yao ni masaa 8 alivyosema yeye. Na ukisema kitu ndani ya bunge ni lazima utaje hapo mahali. Je, ni haki yeye kuongea bila kutaja hapo mahali? Je, anaweza kueleza hili bunge ni watu gani hao wanaoketi mpaka saa hizo, saa 8, saa 9 usiku, na polisi wanaogopa kwenda kuwashika hapo mahali?
I can see another point of order. Senator Cherargei, then you will respond to both of them.
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Senator Ledama to say leaders go and drink up to 3 a.m.? Yet he knows very well that not all leaders drink. So he should be specific. I think, Mr. Speaker, Senator Ledama is casting aspersions, very serious aspersions, by saying all leaders go and drink up to 3 a.m. He should be at least say some leaders, so that is because Mr. Speaker and he should state. I think Senator Mazzaya said state these places that leaders drink up to 3 a.m. while the hustlers drink only up for 1 hour from 5 to 7 p.m. in the evening. Mr. Speaker, is it in order to say all leaders? Yet some of us, and I see most of my colleagues here, I don't want to mention names, only go for kesha, not to drink. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, let me respond by saying this. First of all, my good friend, Senator from Kilifi, his mask just broke because he knows very well that I'm saying the truth. So he was not being honest. My colleague, my good friend from Nandi, should pay attention next time when I'm speaking, because I said some of us leaders. I did not generalize it. Now, to respond to it, to their issues, Mr. Speaker, I'll give you the exact date. About a year ago today, our colleague here, Senator Sakaja, was arrested in a pub in Kilimani called Ladies' Lounge. Is Sakaja not a leader? Isn't it among some of us? And I said some of us. And this is the truth, Mr. Speaker. You know, one day I was coming from Narok at around, 10:30 p.m. And I passed through Ruaka. And one pub there, I don't remember the name because I don't go into those pubs, was open. When I came to Gigiri, I told those cops there, I said, instead of you stopping these cars here, go and close that pub there. And they said to me, that is a different jurisdiction. So the truth of the matter, even the statement raised by Senator Kwamboka did not name any pub. In fact, Senator Kwamboka gave a general statement and said, explain why there is discrimination enforcement of the curfew hours in the country in general or within Nairobi City County, in particular, where restaurants in Nairobi West area are forced to close at 7 p.m. You know, that's a general statement. So since we are seeking clarification, when you stand here to support a statement, you either seek more clarity, because I would have actually asked my good friend Senator Kwamboka to tell me, which restaurants are these? Can you tell me the exact names? Because we know the curfew in Nairobi is at what time? Is it 9 or 9 p.m.? So to be honest, some of the things that I think this committee on security should tell us, maybe when they expound further, is when are we going to open the economy? You know, that is the most important thing. Because we know these fingers are not the same size, Mr. Speaker, and maybe I'm speaking in tongue, but literally, there are those people who live in affluent neighborhoods. You know, they're not equal. Not everyone is equal. I know Senator Cherargei likes talking about hustle.